These are the worst smart tech failures, whether it's privacy, business management, or just plain old screwing up. These failures affected us all. Let's give her. Google has been one of the most controversial companies in the smart home space. They've canceled all kinds of products and even killed off entire companies. That's never going back on. I think one of their biggest failures came from what they called an error. It was an amazing omission, and it likely confirmed all kinds of conspiracy theories out there about what these kinds of companies are trying to do. In 2017, Nest released the Nest Secure Hub. This was the centerpiece of your security system, and it was honestly years ahead of its time. It had a little tag reader, a little keypad, and it made managing that security system really easy. It worked with thread-based products too, which is something that still many companies are trying to use correctly today. But it contained a dark, deep secret that would shake the foundations of trust in what a company tells you is inside of their product. In February 2019, Google said there was a new cool feature coming to the Nest Secure Hub. The Google Assistant was being added directly to it. But how could it do that? See, voice assistants require a microphone, and Google had never disclosed any microphone being inside of that product. This was an accidental admission of a serious omission of the tech sitting inside of that hub, and it instantly became both a privacy and a security concern, as well as a regulatory concern in the United States. Later on, Google enabled both the voice assistant option and a glass breaking detection option through that microphone, and they gave users the chance to turn on and use the microphone, but supposedly only if they wanted to. Quite frankly, it's laughable that a company this size could miss out on disclosing an important piece of technology on a major product release. Imagine if you could buy a single camera to protect your entire home. What a world it would be. And that's exactly what Ring's engineers and marketing teams envisioned when they unveiled the Ring Always Home Cam.
Get to the chopper!
This was a camera attached to a literal flying drone. It could follow rover around your home and be able to look at any security concern at any time. It could cover almost an entire home, at least that was what was shown to us. This product set the world of smart homes on fire, with many people stating immediately that they would pre-order one. It also set the world on fire because, quite frankly, it spurred a lot of privacy concerns and a lot of concerns about the thing just falling someday and knocking poor Rover on the head. It was even called the dystopian attack helicopter by other content creators, and it had garnered probably the most excitement of any smart home camera since the first few ones were released. To this day, Ring has never launched the Always Home Cam. Even worse, they made multiple announcements over multiple years that suggested that they would. It's a massive failure on what could have been one of the most popular smart home products ever. And I still think there's a market out there for this one. So Ring is still failing. To say this hub had a tumultuous story is an understatement. Wink was born in 2014, coming out of an incubator called Quirky. Unfortunately, it didn't come out with enough money, and the business went bankrupt in the fall of 2015. It was almost immediately sold to a company called Flex, and they then spent about a year refining and preparing for the release of the Wink Hub 2. They had managed to turn around the platform and the hub enough that the company was purchased by Will.i.am.
Bring the action.
He had a company that purchased Wink for $59 million. Now, 3 years goes by and a major incident occurs that would forever change how people viewed smart home hubs. In early 2020, reports started to come out that Wink was in some financial trouble. And by May of that year, they essentially confirmed this by instituting a required subscription to use very basic home automation features like automations. In fact, they tried to implement that required subscription so quickly in just 7 days from the announcement that the pushback became extreme from their users. They had to therefore delay it, but still managed to implement this with people who had built smart homes using the Wink system. They had held their customers at gunpoint as it was a matter of financial survival from their perspective. But it didn't take long for the platform to run into additional issues. Approximately 6 months after instituting the required subscription, they had a 9-day outage that affected all services. A year and a half later, they had a multi-week outage, and another year after that, they had another major one. This is essentially a slow, steady decline of a once very interesting smart home system. It's not the worst story, but they definitely don't want you knowing the whole history. Today's video sponsor is Aqara, and I'm really happy to show you the new FP300 presence sensor. We have a review out on this, and I'll leave a link to that below, but I'm gonna spoil it for you right now and say that this is my favorite smart home sensor ever. Its biggest feature is that it can sense when you've come into a room, and it knows when you've stayed in the room, even if you're not moving around. It's true presence detection, and it's fast and accurate. It makes lighting automations really easy. But if that wasn't enough, there are 3 other sensors: a light, a temperature, and a humidity sensor. This means you can create powerful automations that give you the right lighting level, the right temperature, or the right humidity. And the FP300 works in almost any app, from Apple HomeKit to Home Assistant and everything in between. And all of this is powered off just a couple of coin-size batteries. So I'm happy to tell you to go buy one or many of the FP300 from Aqara. Check out the links below. At one time, this company was the envy of every other one. They had best-in-class robot vacuums, were in every big box store, and the word Roomba had become ubiquitous with robot vacuum.
Oh, I strapped an MP3 player to one of those floor cleaning robots. Call him DJ Roomba.
And truly, it still is. But as many other makers came along, developing robot vacuums and mops that both rivaled and even exceeded the Roombas, iRobot began to lose market share. Then they had to raise their research, their development, their marketing, and other business costs to try to gain back market share. Well, ultimately, in 2022, the company started talking about money troubles. Their revenue fell by 25% when compared to the previous year. Companies like Roborock, Shark, and more were gaining momentum. Then along came an offer from one of the biggest companies in the world. Amazon offered up $1.7 billion in late 2022 in a bid to purchase iRobot. It was exactly what both companies needed. Amazon had been working on their smart home lineup with Ring, Blink, the Echoes, and Fire TVs, and adding a company with maps of many North American homes and robot technology would have given Amazon a huge advantage and improved upcoming products like Astro, and heck, maybe the Always Home Cam. iRobot would have gotten what they said they needed: a massive cash injection and a company to help them reassert their dominance. Amazon could have helped them reinvest in tech that would have perfected Roomba, but they had to wait. And while waiting for the deal to go through, iRobot took out a $200 million loan. They also cut their workforce significantly, and they did all the work they could to prove that the deal was a good one for everyone. But the deal was ultimately blocked. EU and US regulators stopped the deal, citing that it would harm competition. Both companies gave up the effort in January of 2024. So not only had iRobot gone further into debt, but they also continued to lose revenue, as 2024 revenue was down another 23% versus 2023. And now iRobot very recently has abandoned even finding another company to purchase them. The stock price has fallen as a result, and we are now likely on bankruptcy watch. Roomba is very likely to be no more, and this is a huge failure that I bet regulators in the EU and US will want you to forget one day. If you bought a smart home product in the late 2010s, it had a few logos on the box, usually one or both of the major voice assistants, and this other weird one called IFTTT. Now that logo meant you could go to that website or use their app to connect your new fancy smart product in, and then automate it using hundreds of services and other smart tech. If this happened, then that happens. Now, customers loved it because it was simple to use, completely free, and you could connect and do things with that service that you couldn't do anywhere else. Companies loved it because their products gained features, and they paid thousands and sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars for this per year. So when IFTTT announced a subscription in late 2020, the backlash from the smart home and smart tech community was immense. Customers revolted. Creators said it was about the almighty dollar, which it was. And many people rightfully called out that the logo on the box had to mean something. It meant something to them, and it should be guaranteed. IFT argued that they couldn't keep going this way.
It's not like this is the feature set, pay us or else. It's no, this is the beginning of something. Us kind of reinvesting in an audience, really the audience that got us here.
They were arguing for their lives, but the customer ultimately had their say. From this moment on, IFT ceased to be a major smart home platform. Even when they launched neat features like automation scripting, people really weren't taking notice. They lost users in droves. Then they lost companies. When major players redid their APIs, companies like Amazon and Google, IFT often lost the ability to connect to them, and one by one, smart home companies left the platform. Today, most smart home products don't even mention IFT as a platform. While the subscription might have fixed profitability, it is still one of the greatest failures in the smart home industry ever. In July 2019, voice assistants were all the rage. Most people I knew were happily using one of the Google Assistant, Apple's Siri, or Amazon's Miss A. And, privacy wasn't a major concern at the time. But that was about to change. There was this massive battle for voice supremacy. The stakes were incredibly high, with each company developing products and services and entire systems to monetize their voice assistant. The knowledge and the data opportunity was huge too. I don't think I could overstate that. Each of these companies were doing what they thought it took to be the best. And amazingly, they all did the exact same thing that changed what we would accept forever. Google, Amazon, and Apple were all found to be taking recordings of your use of their voice assistant. And that wasn't the worst thing. They then took those recordings and gave them to their employees to train their voice assistant. And that wasn't the worst thing either. They were sending those recordings to third-party contractors, people who didn't even work at the company. They would then listen to your recordings, interpret how accurate the voice assistant was, and feed back that data to the company. When the reports started coming out, the reaction was intense. And I remember the anger coming from many of you. People swore off voice assistants then and there. And this incident was probably the major reason all three companies produced serious overhauls of privacy and security settings, as well as building massive marketing campaigns about how much you could trust them with your info. This is a major failure of all three of those massive companies, and they would all like you to forget that one. Before I get to the last two stories, I want to invite you to tell me where you think the biggest failures have happened in the smart home industry. One of my personal favorites is called Smart Dry. It's this little device that went in your laundry and told you when your dryer was done. It wasn't big enough to include in this list, but products like that had an incredible opportunity to automate our lives and instead died early in theirs. Or how about applications like Stringify, purchased by Comcast and essentially shut down so they could include the tech in their own smart home system, essentially denying the world of a tech that was becoming very popular and super useful. What about more recent failures like the Rapid R1 or the Humane AI pin, which we could actually argue was essentially killed by tech reviewers here on YouTube? So what failure hit you the hardest? On August 9th, 2018, at Samsung's Galaxy Unpacked event, the new Galaxy Home Smart Speaker was unveiled to huge excitement and fanfare. It was to become the new alternative to Google and Amazon's larger smart speakers. The speaker was then shown shortly thereafter at CES 2019, but demonstrations were few and far in between, and it was obvious that Samsung's voice assistant Bixby wasn't as powerful as its counterparts from Google, Amazon, and Apple. Samsung had reasons to be confident. They had their own phones. They knew how to produce speakers, and they had the burgeoning smart home platform SmartThings. They also had an incredible array of appliances that they could integrate easily with their speaker. They also had some real-world advantages with Bixby too, as it could access more sensors and more real-world information than the other voice assistants could. In 2019, they announced the Galaxy Home Mini. In early 2020, they even launched this version in South Korea. Look at it, it's busted. But quality clearly was not good. And I have one of a very few number of these Galaxy Home Mini speakers in North America to prove it to you. I can tell you personally that Bixby on here barely worked and that the speaker left a lot to be desired. In the end, the Mini never went anywhere and the larger version was never seen again. Samsung would now like all of us to forget that they failed this bad on what should have been a slam dunk. Putting a security camera in your home is a social contract of sorts. You're trading security for some level of privacy, but you always hope that the trust you're putting in the camera company is never mishandled. And by the way, I rarely recommend you putting a camera inside of a personal living space because of account security breaches. But in 2024, there was an event that wasn't just a security breach or a number of accounts being exposed online. That stuff happens all the time. Instead, there was a mistake that meant over 1,500 people got to watch cameras in other people's homes. And it wasn't the first event with this company. Now, Wyze has always been known as a budget camera maker. Since the release of their very first Wyze cam, they have released countless models to go in and out of your home. They've also released security systems, lighting, and other smart home products over the years, never really breaking from that budget option. But one fateful day in 2024, 13,000 accounts had pictures and videos available to other users. Thankfully, not everyone was looking at their cameras or their account that day. And so approximately 1,500 people had their personal cameras exposed to other people. This incident left Wyze with a major issue. They blamed it on a third-party service, essentially, and they said they were hiring a dozen engineers to fix the problem. But at this point in 2025, they want you to forget that they showed your cameras to other people. Every month, the smart home industry pumps out new products that are interesting and exciting, and we put those together in videos that show you the best. So check out the playlist that's up on screen right there, where you'll see all the newest gear coming from the last year. Otherwise, thanks for watching today, and of course, live smart. I don't know if I can say live smart at the end of that video. Live smart but avoid failures?